Okay, so I think doors are open. Hello, everybody, as you join us. We're going to give it a minute or so just to get everybody into the virtual room. But while we wait, if you could all use the chat function, say hello, tell us where you're dialing in from. We've had snow here in Brighton today, so if you tell us if you've had any snow today. It's been made up a lot of the Creative Access team. Hello, Lucille from Portsmouth. Have you had any snow in Portsmouth? We the creative no. Yay! Tara, you're from London. You also had snow. Yeah, the Creative Access WhatsApp chat was jumping with snow chat this morning. No snow in Sheffield. Ziggy, well, hopefully. Buckinghamshire. Hi, Heather. Snow this morning in Bristol. Excellent. We had a lovely photo from a colleague that's in Scotland this morning. Very snowy roofs. A few flakes in Bath. Thank you, Will. Freezing but sunny. That's nice in Edinburgh. No snow. Sunny. Lovely. Hi, Ellie. Hi, Dara. I'm sorry, I can't. Thank you, everybody. This is a very enthusiastic bunch of attendees. I can't keep up with the chat. Thank you. No snow, just really grey and cold in London from Marley. No snow in Huddersfield, some snow in Surrey. Okay, that's good. Hopefully everybody's time will come, but it won't be too disruptive. Right, we've given it a couple of minutes, so I will kick off. So, hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. It is Working Publishing Week, so we are having this brilliant, hopefully really helpful webinar for you all to learn a little bit more about scientific publishing from some brilliant panelists from IOP Publishing. To introduce myself, I'm Steph. I am Director of Talent and Outreach here at Creative Access. For those of you not familiar with what we do at Creative Access, we are the UK's leading organisation, and we focus on improving diversity and inclusion across the creative industry. So we are a social enterprise non-profit, and we support people from communities that are underrepresented in the sector. So whether that's due to ethnicity, socioeconomic background, disability, or other barriers to progression, we help with recruitment, with training, with mentoring, ongoing career development, to make the creative industries as inclusive and as diverse as possible so that they reflect the society that we all live in. As I said, it's Working Week Publishing, so we are going to be talking about scientific publishing for the next hour, specifically to give you all the chance to ask questions, learn a little bit more about IOP Publishing, hear from the team, and hopefully gather some really helpful advice and practical, useful tips on how to take the next step in your own journeys. So we're going to talk about routes into the industry, what makes a strong application, how we stand out, and how people from all backgrounds can get their foot in the door in this space. So I'll give a little bit of an introduction on IOP Publishing, and then I'll hand over to our four brilliant panelists who have very kindly given up their time to talk to us all to do a brief intro. So IOP Publishing is a society-owned scientific publisher. They are dedicated to expanding the world of physics and making scientific discovery accessible globally. They publish journals, ebooks, conference papers, science news, all with the view to connect researchers and to advance knowledge. They are part of the Institute of Physics, so another not-for-profit organisation, so their focus is purpose over profit. They're also members of Purpose-Led Publishing, a group of society publishers who are committed to driving positive impact within research and across the wider scientific community. So whether you're from a scientific background or not, or you're just curious or want to work in publishing more broadly, you're going to hear today from people who make scientific publishing work day to day and get a real sense of what those opportunities might look like in this sector. Panelists, I'm going to hand over to each of you to introduce yourselves. So if you could give us your name, your job title, and if you can, one interesting fact, no pressure, but one interesting fact about yourselves before we spend a little bit more time listening to what you've prepared to talk to us about. Well, sorry, I'll hand over to Shalini first.
Thanks, Steph. Hello, everyone. So glad to be a part of this panel today. Thanks to Creative Access and IOP Publishing for giving me this opportunity to connect with you all and to share my insights. So I am an associate editor here at IOP Publishing, where I manage peer review across multiple scientific journals. I have a background in chemistry, and prior to joining publishing, I've spent nearly a decade in academia doing academic research. So, what drew me into publishing has been uh, my interest for refining research content and communicating science, which I get to do on a day-to-day basis in my current role. And one other reason why I decided to stay in a creative field like publishing is because I've always loved juggling multiple creative roles alongside my research career, from being a dancer to an actor and even a TV host. So I feel those experiences have shaped how I communicate science, and that makes me feel right at home being in a creative space like publishing. So, yeah, that's pretty much me, and I think I'll dive deeper into my journey in my upcoming slides. So, stay
Thank,
tuned.
thank you so much, Shalini. Alex, I'll hand over to you.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm a research integrity officer at IOP. I've been at IOP for about a year and a half. And an interesting, well, I don't know if it's interesting, but it's a fact about me. I am a big nerd who really likes cats. So yeah, cheers.
Thank you, Alex. Nerds are always interesting. Rob, I will hand over to you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Rob. So I'm an associate editor at IOP Publishing. So that's the same role as Shalini. And I've been at IOP for about 8 years, I think, roughly. I'm not entirely confident on that, but about that time, a scary amount of time. And yeah, an interesting fact about me. Between university, I taught English in Nepal at a monastery for 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, wow, that is interesting. Thank you. And Shwati, over to you for your intro.
Thanks, Steph, and hello, everyone. I am also really excited to be here today and interacting with you all. So my name is Ashwati. I work as a subject commissioning editor at IOP Publishing. I took the leap into the world of scientific publishing 2 years ago. I would say, right, they say time flies when you're having fun. So that's exactly how I would describe my past 2 years. I was born and brought up in Kerala, which is the southernmost state of India. It's known for its like beautiful backwaters, greenery, and coconut trees. And a fun fact, we absolutely adore elephants. So they are our state animal, they are part of our festivals and cultural events. So if you ask me what my favorite animal is, yes, you guessed it right. It has to be the elephant, the majestic elephant.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So, cats and elephants covered already. We're only 8 minutes in. Thank you so much. Right, we are going to spend a little bit of time listening to all four of our panelists. They've prepared some brilliant slides and some great content to talk about their experiences and hopefully give you some extra information and some useful stuff to take away. So we are going to kick off with the first slide. Thank you. It feels very, next slide, please, doesn't it? We are sorry to take us back to those times. Shwati, you're up first. Over to you.
Thanks, Steph, and thanks, Tarandeep, for the comment. Yes, you should definitely visit Kerala. I agree. It's very beautiful. So yes, as promised, I'm going to walk you through my journey into scientific publishing. I will cover a little bit about who I am, what my background is, and what I do at IOPP, and why I do what I do at in my role. So as I said, I hail from a small town in Kerala. And one of my fondest childhood memories is spending time at a small library near my home. So I got my membership when I was in primary school, and that really opened up this whole new world of books and magazines and newspapers to me. And I read pretty much everything. To be fair, it was a small library and not just stories about elephants, but everything I could get my hands on. And there was at one point I had finished almost all books in my age group, and I wanted to borrow books from slightly older section. And of course, the librarian said no, they were not age appropriate. Anyway, growing up in Kerala, and I went to the state schools nearby. A big turning point in my life was, Steph, if you could move to the next slide, please. A big turning point in my journey was getting admission to the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, where I did my bachelor's and master's. It was an interdisciplinary program in science. So that was really huge for me. I had to move to a different state, which was thousands of kilometers away from home. But I got to pursue this really interesting interdisciplinary program in science, where I got to learn all basic science subjects, including physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics. And this was a research intensive institute, and that's where I actually got exposed to this world of scientific research early on during my undergraduate days itself. I worked in a research lab there along with my course in the area of nanophotonics. And I really owe a lot of my journey to my time at ICER, where I learned that I could actually dream bigger and there is a whole world out there for me to explore. So I would say my first big independent decision was when I decided to move to the United States. It was actually a decade ago. It was back in 2015, where I took my first international flight to join a program, a graduate program at Rice University. Now I was moving like 15,000 kilometers away from home. But anyway, I joined the electrical and computer engineering department at Rice University, though my work was mostly on the applied physics side of things. So my initial plan was to do a PhD in the US, but things changed. And long story short, I made another big step when I decided to apply again for my PhD to the University of Cambridge without really much hope, actually. But after an year and a half of interviews and scholarship applications, I finally moved to the UK in 2019 to do my PhD in physics at the University of Cambridge. So I must mention that there are a couple of things that actually made me realize when I was thinking about my next career stage, why I wanted to switch to the publishing world rather than pursue the traditional academic path. So during my time at Rice and Cambridge, I got involved in a number of leadership activities and took up a number of opportunities alongside my course. I must say that most of these were mainly out of curiosity, but also at times when the other part of my journey were not going as well as I hoped for. But all these experiences, to highlight a few examples, I got to co-chair a science communication conference called ComSciCon, which was for graduate students organized by graduate students. Then at Cambridge, I got to be the co-president of the Women in Physics Society. And so after spending, like Shalini mentioned, after spending almost a decade in research intensive environment, which was spanning 3 continents, and after engaging with people coming from different backgrounds, I realized that I could utilize my skills and aspirations in a slightly different way. I still wanted to stay very, very close to academia and connect with people, but in a different way. And it just felt that publishing was the natural choice somehow, and it felt like it was the best of both worlds to me. And during my final year of PhD, I also got to attend this fantastic program called Rising Voice. It was for women in STEM at Oxford and Cambridge. It was actually for people who were looking to do entrepreneurship or do alternative career choices, but that somehow reinforced my decision that, okay, it's actually publishing that I wanted to go to, and that's how I joined IOP Publishing 2 years ago. Now, moving to what I do at IOP Publishing, as I mentioned, I work as a subject commissioning editor, where I help bring the best content to our portfolio of journals. I work across a few journals in the area of photonics, energy, materials, and quantum, which somehow sort of beautifully ties into my multidisciplinary background. The role is actually quite new and multifaceted. And the basic idea is to bring the researcher's perspective to the publishing world and to help bridge the gap between academics and publishers. So as part of it, I provide the scientific expertise and help shape the content strategy. And I bring in the research insights For example, keeping up to date with where the funding is heading, spotting emerging trends, and thus informing the editorial strategy. My role also involves connecting with people and building international network. This is something I really, really enjoy. I involve attending conferences, visiting universities, talking to researchers, students, and so on. And it also gives me an opportunity to drive new initiatives that are intended to make publishing more fairer and open for everyone. For example, highlighting research from people coming from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds. So I really enjoy the challenges, excitement, and the variety this role brings to me on a day-to-day basis. Now, why do I do what I do? And what could you take away if you are perhaps considering a career in publishing? I would like to frame it as 4 Cs. Creativity. Publishing is not just about the processes. It's always about finding new creative ways to support researchers and support research dissemination to the wider public. And curiosity. It is I think irrespective of the role, right? One must stay curious about learning more and learning more about how science could shape the society. And collaboration. Publishing is a highly collaborative process. You get to collaborate with different stakeholders across different teams and also other publishers. And communication, clear and effective communication is at the heart of publishing. And beautifully, these are the skills I would say anybody can develop. For me, like from a small town girl who loved to spend time at library to now working at a top publisher in the UK, it's been quite a journey. And my advice would be, if I may, to keep building your personal profile in any way. There's no proper mold, and find ways to stand out in your own unique way. And I would say, most importantly, stay curious. I would just before leaving you with a short video, which is about purpose-led publishing, I would like to say that publishing is not one-dimensional space. It is diverse and it's constantly evolving, and it is full of possibilities. And I should, of course, go back to my favorite animal. I always like to bring that analogy, is that elephants are known for its unique traits and intelligence and strength. So publishing also has got like many sides to it. And I would say, if you can bring your own strength and perhaps carve out a role that fits you, you can definitely find opportunities in this publishing space. Thank you so much, and I would leave it there.
Thank you, Ashwati. That was so interesting, and lots of really lovely comments in the chat to I agree, really, really impressive background and really interesting journey. Thank you so much. Rob, you are up. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Rob. So as I said earlier, I'm an associate editor at IOPP. And yeah, so I'm just going to go briefly over a bit about my background, what I do at IOPP, and just kind of some kind of advice on how to get into publishing and kind of what I recommend. So next slide, please. That's okay. Yeah, a bit about myself first. So I live in Cardiff with my partner, and that's where I completed a BA and MA in history. So not a science background at all. And I joined IPP about 8 years ago, as I said earlier. As you can see, I've included a picture of my first day on the slide here. So yeah, as I said, I'm currently an associate editor at IPP, which means I manage the peer review process for our journals. I'll go into a bit more about what exactly that means on the next slide. But basically, I do kind of the initial checks of any incoming articles and decide who to send them to for a full assessment. So before joining the IOPP, I didn't have a strong pull towards publishing as a career path, really. And considering I don't have a science background at all, particularly not a scientific publisher, so I wouldn't really see myself going in this direction. I was a bit uncertain really about what I wanted to do and which direction I wanted to go into after finishing my degree. But kind of when I was looking, I found IPP and read more about the publishing industry and IPP particularly, and kind of did my research around that and kind of decided it's a direction I really wanted to go into and a company I really particularly wanted to work in. So when I first joined, I started in a more what's the right word to use? Kind of lower tier entry role. That's the right word. And started at what was then called an editorial assistant. So this role is a bit more admin than my current role, and involves in a lot of kind of author and reviewer correspondence and a few more routine article checks. Initially, after being in this role, I was a bit nervous about potentially moving from that position to my current one as an associate editor because of my lack of a scientific background. But I was really reassured by a few people who were in that role. I did some shadowing, so kind of essentially where you kind of see what they do across the day, and was really encouraged to apply it for my current position. So really based on that, my kind of advice from personal experience is to be kind of really open to different positions, different companies, and different areas within publishing. There's a really huge variety of roles within publishing and lots of different directions to move. And don't really put off if you don't have any experience in publishing. As I've shown, it doesn't really have to be a barrier to apply. And there's lots of different skills you've gathered from either previous roles or kind of education experience that can be applied. And I think the really most important thing is to kind of do your research on where you apply. So both the company you apply to, the position, and see exactly what they want and how you can fit into that exactly. So next slide, yep, we've already moved on. So you might be asking, what do I actually do? As I mentioned earlier, I manage the peer review process across a few scientific journals. So in practice, this means that once articles are submitted to the journal, I have a look and decide whether they're right for that particular journal and whether they look scientifically rigorous enough. If it passes this initial check, it then goes out to experts in that subject who will determine whether it can be published or not. The actual process, is a slightly more complex than that, but that's the basic premise. Alongside that kind of more routine work, I've also had a chance to work on quite a few other projects. For example, I'm involved in a webinar series we deliver to aspiring authors. So this is talking about how they could get published. So it runs through lots of kind of the tips we have on how to produce the best research article they can, as well as workshops on with potential reviewers on how to write a good review. I've also been involved in a few projects on kind of improving our internal processes and kind of the things we check. So for example, recently I say recently, I think it was a couple of years ago now, so not that recently. I was involved in a check on making sure that as much as possible that research using human subjects is balanced in terms of sex and gender, because there's been quite a big problem in particularly biomedical studies in research groups really not being balanced in terms of sex. So generally that will include kind of mostly men, and that means the research isn't applicable to a broad population. So we did a trial on that, which I was heavily involved in. So yeah, so as you might have guessed from that, publishing is hugely collaborative. I work within teams of other associate editors and editors who do similar work with me, but I also get the chance to work with other departments from across the company. We work and collaborate quite often with our development team. So this is the team who deal with the more strategic side of journal management. So they ask kind of the questions like kind of what content do we want to publish, and deal with that strategy, as well as commissioning new work and attracting as many submissions as possible to our journals. As I mentioned a couple of times now, I've been at IOP for about 8 years, and I've always really found it has a really open culture, which encourages this sort of collaborative work, and isn't scared of embracing new ideas from wherever they might come from. So, for example, with that Sega project, and that's part of the reason that really attracted me to work at IOPP after I did my research. So that's part of the reason I'd really advise doing your research and making sure it's a company that kind of fits with you. So next slide, please. So this is a bit of a summary slide, really, and kind of my main takeaways from my time at IOPP. So the first point is really you don't need to know everything. So really don't worry, you don't have a background in publishing before you apply. You might have lots of skills and experience which can be applied to publishing. There's also lots of roles to go for. So if you don't have experience in publishing, you might start off with more entry role and develop within that company. If you do decide to go for a publishing role, it's really important to read the job specification. I know that might sound a really obvious point, but to really address those points in your cover letter and application, to really discuss how you can cover the required skills and also explain what drew you towards publishing in the first place. Collaboration and communication is also really important. In most companies, you work both within and between teams, and collaboration is really key to kind of achieving anything. These are also skills that any employer, particularly in publishing, will really be looking at. So it's really, really kind of key to emphasize those points when you do apply. And from my experience at IOPP, and I'm sure other companies will be the same, there's always room to grow within a role. So the loyalty projects you can get involved in and opportunities to take. So I'd really advise taking opportunities when they're presented, and this will really let you develop within that role. Even if it's not the routine work, there'll be kind of other roles you can go into. And also the final thing is just really the importance of scientific publishing, and kind of now more than ever really, with kind of the risk from kind of probably heard about this a lot about misinformation and AI, generative content, the importance of really trusted peer-reviewed content. So I think that's me done. Bring your hand on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rob. And what are the chances of a photographer being there on your first day? Goodness me.
Yes.
Just a little bit of housekeeping before I pass over to Alex. Everybody that's joined us, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom. If you submit questions to that, we will have a Q&A at the end. If you do that, then you've got the opportunity for people to upvote, and Jasmine and Sidra from the Creative Access team who are monitoring the questions can prioritize the more popular questions. So please do make use of that function. Alex, Ashwathi, we've got some time left for you both, but if we can leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A, that'd be brilliant. We're running a little bit behind, but you're a superstar. Thank you, Alex. Over to you. I'll stop talking now.
Yep, next slide, please. Hello, I'm Alex. This is me. I'm 25, was born in Russia, grew up in Spain. I'm just speedrunning through the boring details. I came to the UK in 2018 to do a degree in physics, studied in London, and you can see a bit of my hobbies. I have quite a variety of hobbies. This is something that I'll talk about later, but I was diagnosed with ADHD somewhat recently. So that's something that has definitely obviously marked my journey in publishing. Next slide, please. So yeah, as I said, studied physics at university. I got a BSc, and I decided that physics was very hard, and I decided to move on because academia was tough. So I started as a general specialist at Frontiers, which is a different publisher. I stayed there for about 2.5 years. my role was more similar to what Ashwati mentioned, so kind of more on the growing the journal, commissioning content, etc., managing the editorial board as well. And after some time there, I decided I wanted to work at a smaller company and have a bit more contact with the science. So I went into research integrity. Next slide, please. Which, yeah, I've been at IOP for about a year and a half. And this role is quite interesting because it involves investigating cases of misconduct and fraud. So it's quite, you know, a bit of a more of a niche role within publishing, which is now becoming more and more important, as Rob mentioned, with like AI and misinformation, things like that. So yeah, I just investigate cases of plagiarism, image manipulation, data fabrication, ethical concerns, you name it, anything that has to do with ethics or the integrity of the work. I work on that. Usually this is flagged to us by associate editors. So yeah, people like Rob, for example, notice something during peer review, flag it to us, and then we investigate it. It's yeah, kind of a detective-esque type role. So quite you know, a lot of contact with authors to, you know, we always want to give them the benefit of the doubt and we want to hear their side of the story. And so we kind of gather evidence and then try to make a decision based on, you know, the guidelines that we have both internally and from the wider industry. And there's also kind of the more proactive side, which is working on updating our policies and checks to improve our detection of misconduct and reduce risk. In terms of things that I've learned in my time here and things that I think would be important to communicate to all of you is, yeah, as I said earlier, in terms of neurodivergence, you know, I think in general publishing, but definitely at IOP, I've had a lot of support within that. And that's definitely, and you know, something that, you know, obviously I'm not going to pretend like ADHD and other neurodivergence doesn't pose any difficulties, but it's definitely something that you can adapt and you can find roles that are closer to, you know, things that work for you. So that's definitely something that I would encourage people who are on, you know, similar to me to keep in mind. And just another thing that I want to highlight, and that has already been mentioned a little bit, is that there's a lot of variety within this industry, and on pretty much every level, there's a lot of variety in jobs. So some jobs are more mechanical, let's say repetitive. Some have more variety and change. Some are more strategic. Some are more have like big picture elements, so kind of strategy and you know, deciding things on a macro scale. And some are more internally oriented, you know, some are more about operations and the, you know, generally speaking within publishing, most companies have you know, have you know, the development side, and then they also have the operation side. So yeah, as I said, there's a lot of varieties in terms of companies, in terms of teams. Some are more strongly tied to targets, and performance. Some other companies or teams have that in mind, but maybe it's not as much of a focus. And I would also say, you know, still at the same industry, so there obviously are general trends and general similarities, but there's a lot of variability in how things are done, even inside each company. The way a commissioning editor works is very different from my role and from an associate editor or from a, you know, any kind of editorial role. So I would say to keep that in mind when applying for jobs, because I think it can be quite confusing across different companies. Some companies call this like a you know, associate editor one thing, but then for some companies, associate editor means a different thing. So even though the name might be the same or very similar, definitely, as also Rob advised, do have a very good look at the job description. Make sure that even if you've applied to do very similar roles in different publishers or even in the same company, you know what is going on. And just the final piece of advice from me is just think about your values and what motivates you within your role and your day-to-day. Because, you know, for me, for example, the fact that I went from a for-profit publisher to a non-profit publisher was a big thing that mattered to me. Some people, that's not necessarily something that matters to them as much, but for me, it did. And I would say there's a balance, because again, I would also echo Rob's advice on doing your research, but I do think there is a little bit of a trial and error type situation where it's, very likely that your first role or your first couple of roles might not be your perfect match, whether it's the team, the company, the manager. There's a lot of different moving pieces. So I would generally recommend, giving yourself also a bit of a break in this process of just, get into the industry, and then once you're there, see what works for you. And yeah, I think that's all from me.
Thank you so much, Alex. A publishing detective sounds like my dream job.
Yeah.
Shalini, other than the one I've got, Shalini, over to you.
Thanks, Steph. It was great to hear the journey of all my colleagues. Okay, so now that you know who I am, I think I'll directly go into how I transitioned from academia to publishing. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Yes, so my journey in academic research started in 2014. I obtained a MPhil and a PhD in chemistry from CUSAT. Again, like Ashwati, it was from Kerala, India. And after that, I spent several years as a postdoctoral researcher, first with CUSAT again, where I even founded my spin-off called as Chem Sensor, and then later in the UK at the University of Nottingham before joining publishing at IOPP in 2024, which was last year. And something that I've been most proud of in my entire research career has been two milestones. One, being able to spread science across multiple diverse audience, including children, which earned me a Guinness World Record in 2015. And the other being awarded a Global Talent Visa here in the UK, which was endorsed by the Royal Academy of Engineering for my contributions to science. So, as a woman in science from a small corner at the tip of India, this really felt like a call to adventure. And I clearly knew that I wanted to be in science. But, I was thinking, what if I leave academia after spending so many years in academia? That would be like leaving research after building an identity that in academia for so long. So I was so confused if I should be leaving research. But that's when I met the right mentor. So things changed when I attended a panel discussion, something like this, where one of the panelists was an editor who explained how editors can stay connected to science while still enjoy work-life balance. And I was like, okay, those words, stay in science and you can still enjoy work-life balance. And that actually opened my eyes to explore opportunities beyond academia. And once I decided, okay, I'm leaving research now, or I'm leaving academia, the next step was crossing the threshold or moving out of academia without having any experience outside academia. And to get that first break was like one of the hardest steps. And initially, I thought, I'll easily make it to publishing because I had a strong academic background. I had around 14 publications then. I had a patent. I had several accolades. So I thought it'd be easy for me to get through interviews. But the truth is, I didn't even clear my first interview. It was only in my second interview that I got into IOPP. And I think that experience taught me a very important lesson that in publishing, success isn't just about existing skills, it's about adaptability and your willingness to learn. So if you're ready to put in that effort, then you have a real chance. So after realizing that adaptability was the key, my next challenge was to learn to crack interviews. And you know what? This is something not everybody tells you. Clearing interviews is one of the hardest part of any job change. On social media, you'll see these success stories of, new role excitement, but what you don't see is the hundreds of applications that went nowhere. And for me, that has been exactly that. Out of what felt like 1,000 applications, I think only a few even led to interviews. So my biggest ordeal then was to learn how to crack interviews, and I did put in a lot of effort for that to learn about publishing. And once I cleared the interview and got into IOPP, then it was like an ultimate boon. I mean, I had an upper hand now because I could now use my academic background and my love for refining research papers in a totally new way. And IOPP's 3 months training course was also a game changer. And at some point, I thought, I might miss research and I would want to go back to academia. But to be honest, till date, I haven't missed academia because it could be because of the cutting that I'm still getting to enjoy the cutting edge science here in my current role, but in a different way. And I think after a year now at IOPP, I feel so much more confident and happy because I'm able to blend my science background with the editorial skills that I learned from here to make research more clear and accessible to the audience. So yeah, that's about my journey from academia to publishing. Next slide, please. Okay, now coming to what I do at IOPP, it's similar to Rob's because I'm also an associate editor here. So we associate editors are basically the link between authors, reviewers, and the editorial board. So like Rob said, when a paper comes in, we make sure that it goes through the peer review process smoothly and fairly. And that is, we check if the paper meets the journal standards, find the right reviewers, and then make decisions based on the feedback that we receive. And again, it's not just about one journal. We'll have to handle multiple journals with different scopes and publishing criteria. But again, the best part is at IOPP, we have some amazing tools and platforms that makes life easier for us. For example, we have a platform called as Scholar One that manages submissions. We have a tool called as Atlas to find reviewers. We have Authenticate to check for plagiarism. So there are several tools that are already in place and are still being developed. So that's the best part at IOPP. And one other part of my role is about visibility and engagement, wherein we need to identify hot papers or impactful research and suggest that to the marketing team so that the work gets the kind of reach it deserves and the authors also deserve, get the kind of recognition they deserve. So yeah, it's basically a mix of science, communication, and collaboration, I would say. Next slide, please. Now, coming to why choose IOP Publishing, most of you have already mentioned here, we have a strong scientific heritage trusted by global research communities over 100 years, a strong commitment to open science with some of the leading initiatives in open access and data transparency. And what I really value is our commitment to diversity and inclusion. For example, say this program partnering with Creative Access clearly shows how seriously we take representation and accessibility in publishing. There's also a strong focus on career development with some structured training programs and opportunities to work on cross-journal projects. Innovation is another key area with investment in AI-driven workflows and tools for improving author and reviewer experience. So yeah, if you're looking for a career that combines science, communication, and impact, then I would say IOPP is definitely a great choice. Next slide, please. So before I wind up, I think I'll give a few tips which I feel would be useful for breaking into publishing. First of all, the best news, you don't need a PhD to get into publishing. Like I mentioned before, it's about adaptability and an open mind to learn that matters the most. Secondly, networking. And I think networking is the key for any job, not just publishing, but for any job. So join webinars, panels, and publishing events like this one to build connections and learn more about publishing. And thirdly, it's okay to start small. I mean, like entry-level roles are great stepping stones. Fourth, showcase your communication skills because, like everyone mentioned, editorial work is all about collaboration with authors, reviewers, and the boards. And lastly, stay curious because publishing, like any other field, is evolving with the new AI tools that's coming in, open science and integrity initiatives. So show enthusiasm for these changes, and I think that'll set you apart. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. I hope I was able to give you some insights into publishing and how you can be a part of it. So thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Shalini. That's fantastic, and thank you all of you for your journeys and for sharing all of that with us. We have been receiving questions in advance, and people have been making really good use of the Q&A function in the chat. So the Creative Access team have been feeding me questions to ask you that have been coming in real time. But we do have some pre-prepared ones. We've actually covered a lot of this content already, so thank you all, because that will save us a little bit of time so that we can get to this sort of specific in-the-moment questions. But the first sort of batch of the first theme of questions that we had in advance was around needing a STEM background, and I think, Rob, you're the perfect example that that is not necessary to work at IOP. Alex, I don't know if you wanted to add anything extra to that.
I just wanted to quickly say that, yeah, it's not really like I think it depends on the publisher. I think some publishers put more emphasis on it than others, but even then, I do think that generally speaking, your skills that you can demonstrate are a lot more important than the background. yeah, I think there's a slight variance within what role you're going for. There are some roles where, you know, that background can be really helpful. But let's say from my perspective, in my role, for example, given that, you know, even IOP publishing, you know, it's physics, but it's still physics is such a broad subject that even if you have a really good, let's say, a PhD in physics in a very specific area, there's so many different papers that we come across. You know, it's like biophysics, engineering, pure theoretical physics, cosmology. So having a degree in that wouldn't, like, you know, if I have a PhD in astrophysics, coming across a paper about I don't know, drug delivery doesn't really give me that much of an advantage. So it's really, you know, it's a benefit, but I wouldn't say when it comes to like the role and the application, it's the most important thing.
It's not essential. We've had a sort of in a similar theme to this. Rob, we've had a question for you specifically about how you found going into scientific publishing with a non-scientific background, and what particular challenges you faced, if any, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course. For me, so the most challenging part was more the confidence. So particularly going into an associate editor role where you might be, I don't know, rejecting a paper from a kind of an expert in this subject and not being an expert yourself. But really that's just kind of time in the role and kind of building up the confidence, talking to kind of other people in that role who might also not have a scientific background, and kind of just realizing this role is more about being an expert in the editorial process rather than an expert in papers. And after all, that's what the peer review process is for.
Brilliant,
so,
thank
you. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you, Rob. Another really clear theme from the questions that were sent in advance has come up again actually today, and it's about making applications stand out. But the question that we've had today says publishing is really competitive, entry roles particularly so. I've applied for several different entry roles and paths have been unsuccessful. Any top tips to break in? Shalini, would you mind taking this one?
Oh yeah, no problem. Like I said, I mean, I'm a person who have lost several in several applications and several interviews, so I think I can clearly answer that. I think when preparing, the first thing is about preparing your CVs and your cover letters, which is quite significant because I've seen nowadays people upload the job description into AI tools like ChatGPT and ask them to prepare a cover letter, which is very common nowadays. So one thing I would say is please don't make these AI tools prepare your cover letters or CVs, because if you do that, remember there are several others who do the same, and your resume or your cover letter is not going to stand out. So that's one thing. So whatever you have, just be specific to what your skills are and put that in your cover letter and be very specific. Like, I mean, keep it concise and structured. It would also be good to put in a personal statement. And like I said before, you don't need to have any existing skills to start in publishing. But if you have, then of course it's good to highlight that in your cover letter or your CV, so that you know that's an added advantage. So it's, and also make sure to tailor the resume or your cover letter specific to the role that you're applying, and read through the job description clearly, because you know we need to tailor it in such a way that it matches the job descriptions and the skills they're looking for, rather than just putting in whatever we know or whatever we have. So I think that's the best way to make your application stand out.
Thank you. That's so helpful. In a similar vein to that, Rob, I wondered if you would talk us through your thoughts on what people trying to break into the industry should be doing now to sort of maximize their chances of getting the foot in the door. If you had any tips.
Yeah. So from my experience, it's kind of looking at a kind of a variety of roles. So it might not be the first kind of position you apply for. So you could go for kind of a position in a different area of the company and move internally. There's kind of chances to gain kind of industry-specific experience in kind of internships and short-term roles and kind of volunteer opportunities. There's plenty of industry events you can go to, and there's follow-in and kind of engage it with publishing professionals on LinkedIn and socials, and kind of communities like Creative Access or the Publishers Association, where you can kind of get lots of information, also access to job boards and mentorship. But also kind of slightly linked to the previous points, or the kind of cover letters and applications, is kind of really reading job specifications carefully and think about how your current skills can apply to that specification. Think about how you can develop within roles. So that's kind of linked to my first point of kind of, it might not be your dream role you apply for first, and kind of really consider the variety of roles you can apply for. Really tailor your CV and applications to roles and companies. Research the job, research the company, and fully prepare for the interview as much as you can. If you're ever unsure about the role, in lots of cases, there'll be a chance to ask questions with the employer as well. So on applications, there'll be quite often be, if you have any questions, contact this person. So that's also really good way to kind of gain more information about the role and kind of find out exactly what they're looking for.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rob. The next theme on that came through really clearly was around sort of career switches or changing path, changing direction. Swati, I wonder if you would give us your thoughts on any specific recommendations for career switches, or applicants who've had different experience, or older applicants, and what kind of transferable skills they should emphasize when trying to make this move.
Yeah, sure. Happy to take that question. Yeah, firstly, I understand that could be a daunting phase, right? Either you have taken a long career break, or you want to like really switch careers. So as Steph, you've already mentioned, focusing on those transferable skills. One thing I've noticed is that oftentimes we tend to take the skills that we have gained as part of a role or something. We tend to take those for granted. But if you can take a step back and reflect on those skills, such as, communication, like project management, you might have taught a course, like you might have volunteered for an event. So just think about what are those skills like, it could be about communication, like project management, delivering some sort of customer service, for example, because even in publishing, there are so many different departments. So there is a department in that it's a media department, there's legal department. So there are a lot of departments where you could actually bring in like those skills. So I would say just taking time to think about those skills. The second aspect is that I would say try to upskill yourself, especially if you are on a career break, like you want to get back into any role for that matter. Think about how could you upskill yourself? These days there are so many courses, like free courses available, short ones, even like in LinkedIn learning platforms. So try to find those courses and upskill yourself. This is a term I learned recently. There's something called skill stacking, apparently. It's basically you thinking about all the skills you have and see if you put those together, where do you see yourself? Okay, how would you make you look? So still stacking. And I also say that maybe older applicants or people who have had a lot of experience in different settings, they can actually bring a very unique and different perspective to the role that they're applying to. So I would reframe it as your superpower, or your unique strength. Again, that's something we tend to take it for granted. So yes, in a nutshell, I would say try to reframe your narrative, and particularly look at the place where you want to go, see yourself, and see how you could upskill yourself. And especially, I think there was some people asking about returning from maternity leave, for example. So you could subscribe to these short newsletters, for example. A lot of organizations have. So for example, in LinkedIn, you follow a company, you will automatically be subscribed to their weekly or monthly newsletter. So that's a great way to stay upfront with, okay, what's going on in the industry. In publishing, there's something called Scholarly Kitchen. I find it quite interesting. So you get to read all these like nice developments happening in the field. So, and yeah, I can't emphasize enough, just network, connect with people on LinkedIn. Even if you see a job advertisement, you get to see who advertised that role, right? Just reach out to them. I mean, this is not something I did. I really wanted to, but again, and maybe I didn't have the confidence to do that back then, but I would highly recommend that. And I believe most, I mean, if not everybody, they'll be really happy to have a chat with you and tell you more about the role. As a final point, sometimes there are these locum roles that would come. You know, somebody has gone on a maternity break and so that's a short-term role. So if you want to get a taster of, okay, I don't know how it's going to look like, but I want to give it a go. I think those short term fixed positions are also a great way to understand more about that sector.
Thank you so much. And I absolutely love the positioning of your previous experience, or sort of a different career path up to now, as your superpower and your USP. That is such a positive way. And you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more with you. Thank you. We are almost to time, but we've got two specific questions that I really would love answered before we wrap up. So the first one that's come through today says, hi, I'm about to start a PhD in physics in the new year and was wondering what the best route is to follow to get into publishing and keep writing while also working on a thesis. If anybody has any advice for this to help answer this question, I'd be very grateful.
I can suggest something. So one thing is, for example, IOPP, we have something called Peer Review Excellence Training Program. So this is for anybody who, again, it is free for anybody to take. So if you're particularly going to start a PhD, and definitely you will be writing papers, and maybe in the future you would want to go through the peer review process as well. So there are these courses that you can learn at your own pace, and you will also be recognized for that. So that's a great way to build your skills and also demonstrate your interest early on. Yeah, that's something. So things like that you could definitely. And we also offer something called co-peer review, I believe. I think the associate editors can correct me if I'm wrong. Wherein if you are probably in a later stage of your PhD and you want to get involved in the peer review process along with your supervisor, we also provide that option. So depending on your skills and interests, so basically you can get involved in this world of publishing already when you're doing your PhD.
Thank you.
Talk to people in the publishing, just connect with them.
Thank you so much. We actually don't have time for questions, but for any more questions, but the last question was specifically to Alex, and Alex has really kindly just messaged me to say that if anybody wants to send him a message on LinkedIn with any questions about his role, which this question was specifically about his role, to do so. That was the last question, was about what skills needed for your role. So thank you so much, Alex. So we will, that's a very, very kind offer. So yes, if we haven't been able to answer your question, we've run out of time, or there's anything that comes to you after the session as you think over everything all of our brilliant panelists have said, please do drop them an email. So there's an email address there. Please do take a note for the careers team to get back to you. There's their website. There was a question about where these roles are visible. You'll be able to find them on their website. You'll be able to follow them on all of their social media platforms. Have a look on LinkedIn, register for vacancies at Creative Access, for email alerts and things. There's always opportunities popping up. So best of luck, everybody. And please do make a note of their socials. Make a note of our socials as well, if you'd like. So please do reach out to us if you have any questions that you want us to pass on. Like I said, register as a candidate, and we would really welcome your feedback to keep us delivering really useful content. So if you want to give your feedback on this form, please do scan the QR code and follow the link in the chat so that you can let us know what you thought of today's session. And Sidra has very helpfully put the link in for the feedback form in the chat as well. If everybody could fill that out, we'd be really, really grateful. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you, panel, so much for your time and sharing your journeys. They have been so interesting. I have really, really enjoyed listening to all four of you. And hopefully it was useful to everybody that's joined, and it's sort of encouraged you all to keep going, trying to access careers in this space, and giving you some useful tips and guidance to take with you for your next applications and lots of thank yous in the chat. So panel, please do take the time to read all the thank yous to all 4 of you. And we're to time, just on time, just about. So thank you all so much. I think that concludes our session today. Thank
Steph,
you, everyone.
thanks to you too, Steph, for being a wonderful host.
Oh, it's my
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you.
Anytime. Should we do it again next week?
Every week.
Every
Up
week,
for
every
it.
lunchtime. Well, just us 5. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Have a lovely rest of working publishing week, and lovely rest of your Wednesdays.
Take care.
Likewise.
care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.